What fact are you just tired of explaining to people? Antibiotics will not help your virus, even if you feel really crappy. I need your effing identification information because we are at a bank. I don't care who you say you aren't the person you're claiming to be until I have proof. You can't just walk into the bank, ask for $10K, and not expect to be verified. Stop giving me a hard time protecting your money for you. Wait, people actually do this? How stupid do you have to be to expect the bank to just give you money? I would hope they ask me for ID. I would be mad if they didn't. I'm a programmer. I write programs. I don't know why your computer won't turn on. Apostrophes don't make words plural. The difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Two completely different diseases. Being a healthcare worker and sometimes having to explain it to my coworkers is tiring. As a type 1, I hate this too. I get told many times over that I'm doing things wrong and that I have no idea what I'm doing, and it's not so hard, because they've lived it. As a type 2 diabetic, diabetes is also just a condition that can vary wildly based on the individual, and what works for one may not necessarily work for the other. Never make assumptions. Tax brackets. No, Jenny, making an extra 5K does not mean the other 50 grand gets taxed at a higher rate. Only money in the higher bracket gets taxed at that rate, not all previous money. After a number of replies, I will mention the benefits issue where, unlike taxes, sometimes making too much money can screw you. Be it healthcare or housing, $1,000 difference could result in a massive increase in costs. Most such things are all or nothing unlike taxes. I got a temp job in accounts receivable when I was fresh out of college. And I remember the director of the department telling me it was better to stay a temp than to get hired full-time because my raise would mean I paid more taxes. I was baffled. She had a degree in accounting. Everything is made of chemicals. Not everything natural is good, and not everything man-made is bad. Just because someone doesn't always need their disability aids, that doesn't mean they're not disabled and faking it. Someone who needs a wheelchair to get around doesn't always mean they can't use their legs. They can still walk short distances. Part-time chair user here. When I started, I felt like everyone was looking at me, so I would do less, despite the fact using the wheelchair allowed me more accessibility. Maintaining a safe following distance is the easiest thing to do to avoid accidents, and yet most people aren't doing it. It's basically impossible to react in time to avoid an accident if you're following less than 2 seconds behind someone. It doesn't get you where you're going faster. The accident will always be your fault. And finally, 2 seconds is way longer than most people think. Most will count 1 second. I always try to do this. It's the absolute worst, though, when people try and aggressively squeeze in between me and the car in front of me. Drives me crazy. Pretty sure it's an everywhere in the US thing, but here in Florida, if I leave more than a car length gap between myself and the car in front of me, someone always has to squeeze their car in. Slow down so I can increase the distance. People behind me get instantly impatient, pass, then do the same crap to me when the lane they just barely passed me in is going 2 miles per hour slower than me. Gets a job at NASA. All extended family asks if the moon landing was real. Pain. That disagreeing with someone's opinion isn't an attack on them. Just because I work in IT doesn't mean I know everything technology related. It is a vast field. You work in IT? What phone should I get? You work in IT? Do you know why this app isn't working? We're not all help desk or some sort of phone tech support, I promise. I stopped telling people I'm a programmer with a degree in IT. I stopped after my pest control guy stopped me and held me up for 30 minutes asking how his Mac got hacked. Like, dude, there are a million possible reasons why your computer is hacked. I'm not gonna fix it in my driveway. When you're adjusting the temperature on a thermostat, you're not changing the temperature of the air that blows out. You're just changing how long it'll stay on until it reaches that temp. I have insomnia. No, I can't just think about nothing. Just go to bed earlier. No. Going to bed when you're not tired only makes the problem worse. My psychiatrist told me only go to bed when you're tired. It's not about getting a certain number of hours, it's about going to bed when you're tired. Also, try to get out of your head so much about not getting enough sleep and telling yourself tomorrow will suck because you're tired. Seeing him in a week to tell him that advice didn't work for the last 3 months. An hour-long YouTube video about something does not mean that it is true. It could just mean that some crazy or stupid person posted an hour-long video about nothing, and you are now dumber for having listened to it, and may God have mercy on your soul. If I'm working at night, I need to sleep during some portion of the day. I remember still living at home after high school and getting a job that required midnights for a year. My mom would wake me up and ask me to take my sister to school, set something out for dinner, or run errands while she was at work, since I was off all day. When I got mad for being woken up at practically 1 a.m. for a normal person to go get milk from the store, she'd tell me to stop being lazy. Some people have a serious disconnect with this. Airplanes don't fall out of the sky when they lose an engine. A 747 can glide nearly 100 miles after losing all engines at cruise. That type 1 diabetes isn't caused by your diet, and it cannot be cured. Historic life expectancy is heavily skewed by high infant mortality. If you got past 4 or 5 years old, you had a good chance of making old age. People weren't just dropping dead at 35. It's the same thing with World War II. The average age of fighters in Germany was 35. It's a weird age, right? Like, shouldn't it be 24 or something? Because towards the end of the war, both 16 and 60-year-olds were fighting. Viruses are not bacteria. Bacteria are not viruses. Also, the flu shot didn't give you the flu. Either you're feeling crappy because your body is trying to fight off the broken down pieces of the flu antigen from the vaccine, or you happen to catch something around the same time. It really needs to be made clearer to people that fevers, runny nose, inflammation, etc. are immune responses and not the disease itself. Wi-Fi does not equal internet. I'm mostly telling this to my kids. We frequently lose internet connectivity, but the Wi-Fi will be working fine. They will never understand. Telling people the Wi-Fi is the pipes and the water is the internet. I can only install the pipes. The utility has to send the water through. Seems to help people get the message. When in trade school years back and learning about electricity, the instructor taught us the water is the electricity, the pressure of the water is voltage, the size of the hose is amplitude amperage, your thumb on the end of the hose is resistance. So many light bulbs turned on that day. You cannot get a raise and wind up with a lower net income because of taxes. Income taxes are progressive. The higher bracket does not apply to the money you make under the threshold. This is different from the welfare cliff, which is very real. I once argued this with a coworker. They insisted they made less after a raise. I convinced them to show proof, and what really happened is they increased their 401k contributions in an attempt to reduce taxes and overshot. They still didn't believe me that their missing money was really in their retirement account and not going to taxes. Wheelchairs aren't cheap, and cheap wheelchairs are not suitable for everyone. Not suitable for hardly anyone, in fact. It's not a choice of a PS30K wheelchair or a PS300 wheelchair. It's a choice between sitting in a chair that fits the needs of the user that enables them to be active in their life, or sitting in an unsupportive seat on wheels that physically harms the person until they're out of it again. I'm tired, and I don't know why I'm tired. Do a sleep study. Most insurances cover it. I had the same issue. I constantly took naps. Turns out I woke up 34 times a night. The average person wakes up 2 to 5 times because of my breathing. I got CPAP and holy crap, my life changed. I started hawking sleep studies to everyone I knew. 3 of them also ended up with CPAPs and had the same results. Now I won't lie, a CPAP sucks, and you have to get used to it, but waking up refreshed almost every day is a game changer. Don't get your mental health information from TikTok, Facebook, or self-proclaimed experts who aren't professionally licensed. I no longer offer a professional opinion anywhere outside of work, and that includes Reddit. I've learned that 95% of the time, people don't want to hear the facts. They just want to circle jerk about whatever reality they've conjured up in their heads, and if you correct them, they'll be pissed off. And then it's a bad time for everyone. Signed, a psychiatrist. I've had so many keyboard warriors revoke my diagnosis and re-diagnose me with other disorders solely because I openly talk about a symptom that doesn't match their view of that disorder. They never like it when I tell them my designated mental health professional knows my condition better than they do. How evolution works. Giraffes didn't stretch their necks. All the ones with short necks repeatedly died before reproducing. Evolutionary filters require mass death and/or overpowering reproduction of a mutation. Also, science isn't a belief system. It's a method of repeatable testing. On a related note, I wish more people could understand decision versus instinct from an accurate view through evolution. Most people that seem to respect the general idea of evolution still seem to think it's a choice that governs the behavior of animals. Like, no. It's not that giraffe ancestors decided to go for the leaves on the taller trees and that somehow this drove them to self-evolve to have longer necks. The ones that happened to have longer necks were more likely to survive and reproduce, and the ones that didn't died. Over a long time, this changed what it meant to be a giraffe. There's not a decision that comes into it. Evolution, intergenerational mutations in species due to selective and adaptive pressures on survival and reproduction, where the organisms that are best suited to the conditions survive long enough to pass on the successful traits to subsequent generations. Repeat until it fails. I'm a ginger, and many people ask me if all my hair is also ginger. Software developers are not computer technicians. That chronic illness is chronic, like permanent, like forever. Still sick? Not getting better. Get it? I'm not telling you what I did, why it happened, what happened as an excuse. It is an explanation. Why did you fall asleep during the movie? I was tired. Don't give me excuses. What the frick do you want me to say? Or I'm not answering back either. My stepmother says I have an answer for everything, and it's like, yeah, you asked a question or implied I had no reason to do something. I'm not a mindless zombie, I do think about my actions. Your opinion does not carry the same weight as an expert who has spent their entire life working on an issue. Corollary, stop giving extra weight to the opinions of sports, movie, pop stars on things not related to athletics, showbiz, or music. They likely don't know any more than you or me and the person brewing your coffee at Starbucks. Stella Liebeck, the woman who won a lawsuit against McDonald's over hot coffee, had every right to sue them. It's been mocked so many times over the past 20 years, with people ridiculing this woman and making it out like she's some idiot who was surprised that coffee was actually hot and that she was just attempting a money grab or something. In reality, the temperature of the coffee was freaking ridiculous, and there was no reason for it to be hot enough to cause third-degree burns on her legs when she spilled it. She had to have multiple skin graft surgeries and spent 8 days in the hospital where she lost 20 pounds. After that, she needed additional care at home and was partially disabled for the next 2 years. She had no choice but to sue to cover the cost of her surgeries. This happened a long time ago, but to this day I still overhear people mocking this case or making references to it in jest. Liebeck didn't want to go to court. She just wanted McDonald's to pay her medical expenses, estimated at 20 grand. McDonald's only offered 800, leading her to file a lawsuit in 1994. After hearing the evidence, the jury concluded that McDonald's handling of its coffee was so irresponsible that Liebeck should get much more than 20 grand, suggesting that she get nearly 2.9 million to send the company a message. Liebeck settled for less than 600 grand, and McDonald's began changing how it heats up its coffee. My hands shake a little. It becomes worse when I'm anxious and nervous when people point it out and tell me to stop shaking. Another thing, I have gone to the doctor, a specialist. He told me it was normal. People still try to misdiagnose me with Parkinson's. The worst part, it's always people not in the medical field. I have the exact same affliction. Tremors run in my family. Got made fun of a lot in grade school. Nothing's wrong, it's just my face. Shaving doesn't make your hair grow back thicker. Being an introvert doesn't mean I'm shy. It means having a social battery that gets run down and sometimes becomes empty if I don't have enough peaceful alone time to recharge it. My job is people enough, but at least I'm paid to be there. I actively avoid crowds on my time off. Crowds don't drain me the same way as hanging out and interacting with a dozen people that I actually like. I love that time with friends and family, but it's draining. The other NPCs at the airport yesterday didn't bother me. That my lifelong history of depression has little to nothing to do with my relatively stress-free life. People are always saying, "What do you have to be depressed about?" Believe me, I wish it were that simple. That many Chinese people have my surname, but we're not all related to Jackie Chan. Just like how not every person with Johnson as their surname is related to Boris Johnson. That because I can usually figure out how to fix most things does not mean I want to fix everything that breaks for anyone else. That the burden of proof is on the one making a claim. It's not my job to prove an election was not stolen, vaccines don't cause autism, etc. My ADHD is an explanation, not an excuse. Add this to the "you would be so successful if you had just applied yourself or tried harder" childhood refrain, and it's no wonder so many of us have anxiety or depression. As a female child of the 80s and 90s, ADHD wasn't a diagnosis given often to girls then. It also manifests differently. I would have been successful if I had a proper diagnosis early in life. That feeling you have about your thoughts is still felt and can make or destroy you equally to feelings about non-imaginary situations. I learned this in therapy. I run negative imaginary scenarios in my head a lot. My therapist called this catastrophizing, and need to remind myself to let go of the scenario instead of solving it because it drains me if I think about it too much. What's especially draining is when you successfully banish the catastrophized thought and then it comes back over and over and over. My biggest epiphany was that you have to be vigilant in banishing those thoughts. They never stop popping up, so you can't ever get complacent, which in and of itself is a draining thought. Sure, they slowly decrease in frequency, but at first, it's never-ending vigilance and feels like you're not making progress sometimes. That we are short-staffed and you're just going to have to wait, and yelling won't make things go faster. As a manager, that usually was my chance to shine. This isn't a good fit for your dining experience, and I would recommend going somewhere else because you're not dining here. My hostesses were underage, and I do not let people harass, yell, or curse at my employees for any reason. I have generalized anxiety disorder. I cannot just decide not to be anxious about stuff. I take medication because I can't stop. Telling me to just not worry about it and mind over matter is not going to work. This is a medical issue I am actively being treated for. If I could just choose to stop, I would. Telling me it's all in your head is also useless. Of course it's in my head. It's a brain problem. Where else is it going to be? Being skinny doesn't mean I'm healthy. Losing weight didn't mean I was doing well. Wow, you look great. Have you lost weight? Yes, thanks. It's the depression. That the people who made up the Avril Lavigne death theory admitted to it and said it was created to show how gullible people can be, which worked since the woman is still getting comments accusing her of being fake to this day. Not to mention there were other people listed, but Avril's only got big due to the Shane Dawson video. Africa is a continent with dozens of countries. I'm just being honest is not an acceptable excuse for being an asshole. And saying you have no filter really equates to that you don't care how you come off or respect others. Share if you agree on social media will never bring about any form of sweeping changes or reforms and never will. Changing your profile picture to a flag, person, or key worker to show solidarity is not effective. Sending thoughts and prayers and positive energy is also not a solution to bring change. The act of observing can change the phenomenon being observed. This is not only true in physics. Have you ever stood over someone's shoulder whilst they're typing? I'm a male and a nurse. No, I don't want to be a doctor. No, I'm not going to school to be a doctor. No, I don't feel like less of a man because I'm a nurse and not a doctor. And stop calling me doc and doctor. I've told you 5 times I'm your nurse, and my badge says nurse in big letters. Monkeys make terrible pets. Hate against any race is hate, though not always systematic. Hate against any sex is hate, though not always systematic. If hate makes you feel good, you are part of the problem. Yeah, there's a difference between bigotry on individual versus systemic/systematic bigotry. The gap in a resume, especially when you're giving a 10-year history. I started asking why they can't retain employees. Can you explain this gap in your employment history? I was unemployed? Okay, but were you unemployed because you went off to enjoy nature, or were you locked up for assaulting your last employer? Yes, libraries still exist, and yes, people still use them. And yes, we have other things than just print books, like free COVID tests, a weekly vaccine clinic, classes that are free. That I don't drink alcohol, any kind, simply because I don't like how it tastes. I even find the smell disgusting. And I don't owe anyone an explanation why, even if you're my boss at a company event trying to pressure me into drinking. The amount of time I have wasted on pushing back alcohol pushers is just too damn high. I don't go forcing them to not drink, then why can't they stop forcing me to drink? How algorithms are built to feed you only what you want to hear and see, and creates a bubble of ignorance towards everything else. Depressed people can and will be happy sometimes. We don't just all sit around being completely miserable all the time, only most of the time. The air is in the bag to protect the chips. You are buying weight, not volume. Basic financial math. I have had to go through and show people that they did, in fact, spend too much money, and that's why they are broke. That depression is a real disease. I stopped telling people I'm depressed years ago. If asked, I just tell them I'm tired. It isn't a lie, and they accept it without telling me to cheer up. That I really don't want to eat meat. I'm not against it. Really, eat all you want. I just don't like it anymore. It drives me crazy when people think that just because I don't eat meat that I have some kind of opinion on what they eat. I don't give a crap. To each their own. I'm trying to eat, not debate. The stereotype is that vegans or vegetarians can't go a minute without telling people they are vegan or vegetarians, and that they try to push their opinion on it down your throat, etc. In my experience, it's quite the opposite. I've seen far more meat eaters grilling vegan or vegetarians for their personal choices. Poison is not the same thing as venom. People call snakes poisonous when really they mean to say venomous. Venom has to be injected into the bloodstream, like a snake bite. Poison has to be ingested to enter your bloodstream. You could drink rattlesnake venom and your stomach acids would kill it. But if you put that same rattlesnake venom on an open wound or injected it for whatever reason, that's going to be a problem. If it bites you and you die, it's venom. If you bite it and you die, it's a poison. Correlation is not causation. Type 1 diabetes is not caused by eating too much sugar as a child or having a bad lifestyle. Please don't offer to give me insulin if I go low and pass out. That will definitely kill me. You cannot reduce fat in a specific part of your body. None of those fitness influencers exercise to burn belly fat or kill your love handles do anything. To lose fat, you must reduce your overall body fat percentage with a caloric deficit. Detroit is not the worst place in the world. Detroit's not even the worst place in Michigan. Alpha and omega animals theory was debunked by the same person who proposed the idea. Small caveat, it was debunked in Nature. Wolves will display that behavioral tendencies in some types of captivity, which is where he got the idea from. But this is like someone trying to understand human culture while only observing the worst prisons in the world. I'm not helping my wife with the kids, chores, and cooking. I'm being a parent, living in a household, and hungry. That depression isn't just being sad for a couple of hours. That the age of consent in Japan is not 13. People are not going around having sex with middle schoolers in Japan with no legal issues. Federally, the age of consent is 13, but most prefectures of the actual cities have the age of consent set to 18 and maybe 16. I know this because I literally went out of my way to find a Japanese government website that clearly explained that this was the case. Similarly, you will find many claims of low AOC in other places. But when you find the details, these low ages are for age-bracketed relationships or unlikely situations. Example of the latter, there is no absolute lower statutory age in Ohio, if you are married. But good luck marrying that 8-year-old. That just because I'm bisexual doesn't mean I will have sex with anyone. When it's winter in the northern hemisphere, it's summer in the southern hemisphere, and vice versa. Do you really think it's winter all over the world at the same time? The president doesn't control gas prices. That I don't want to have kids. When family asks me why I don't have kids yet, I just tell them I keep trying to get my hand pregnant, but it hasn't worked yet. They stop asking pretty quickly. I'm autistic. I'm not Sheldon. I'm not Mr. Calculator. I'm me. I have some issues that I need to work on. Who doesn't? So just give me some space and time to figure things out. Thanks. And no, I didn't catch the tism from the vaccine. The devil, Dungeons and Dragons, not praying enough, etc. Men can be domestic violence victims. People generally do not have a good understanding of why they feel a certain way, and it is not reasonable of you to demand to know why somebody is feeling the way they do. Similarly, people are not responsible for the way they feel because it's not something they can control, at least not very much. They are, however, responsible for how they act based on those feelings. A light year is a measure of distance, not time. You didn't get hacked. You gave away your login information to somebody. Chiropractors are not doctors. They are con artists who, at best, just crack your joints for you and, at worst, can cause serious debilitating injuries or even death. The real doctor form of chiropractor is called an orthopedist. No, Karen, schools aren't putting in litter boxes for furries. That's not how any of this works. That I look like an Asian, but I am not Chinese, and I don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese. You don't get a cold by staying in the cold. One recent paper I saw challenges that a bit. The effectiveness of nasal mucus at stopping viruses from entering your system decreases substantially in the cold. So while being in the cold by itself doesn't make you sick, it can make you more susceptible. As a twin, no, I cannot talk to my twin through our minds, and yes, we were born on the same day. All media is biased, even the one you're watching. Spay and neuter your pets. Comic Sans isn't a bad typeface, it's a well-made typeface that gets misused. Saying you hate Comic Sans is like saying you hate hammers because they can't turn a screw. Jim Jones did not give poisoned Kool-Aid to the people at Jonestown. It was another brand called Flavor Aid. Privacy is important, and just because you have nothing to hide doesn't mean you should be okay with invasive overreach for no reason. Most foods marketed to you as healthy are not healthy. Eat simple whole foods, go to the meat section, fresh produce and simple whole foods. Skip the healthy food aisle. Organic foods are also not healthier from a macronutrient level. Being vegetarian doesn't mean I can eat fish. On the bisexual route, attractions can work in different ways and to different extents. They can ebb and flow, and not all of us are sexually promiscuous or polyamorous. That migrants can't all be here to both steal our jobs and claim unemployment benefits. Inflation decreasing doesn't mean prices go down. Most supplements are junk. That the factoid of you swallowing 8 spiders a year while you sleep is not true. It never was true. It is part of a list of made-up bullcrap written by a woman journalist to show how gullible people are about things they read on the internet. Of all the things she listed, that one took off like wildfire. Celiac is a real disease that millions of people have, including myself, and no, it cannot be cured by eating bread. Evolution isn't about becoming better, it's simply changing over time. We didn't evolve from monkeys, we share a common ancestor. That nuclear power is the safest form of energy. Absinthe doesn't make you hallucinate. NFTs are a scam. Always were, always will be. That TikTok is invasive malware from the Chinese government, and this has been common knowledge since Musical.ly. That calories in versus calories out is more important than anything else when the primary goal is fat loss. Crazy how our education system has failed us on something so basic. Everyone is equal and free to have opinions, but that doesn't make your opinions equal. People say way too much stupid stuff and then somehow you're supposed to not contradict them because they have the right to their opinion. White privilege doesn't mean you have an easy life if you're white. It just means your skin color hasn't contributed to whatever difficulties you may face in the way that it can for others. Government officials and corporations do not care about you, and you need to stop idealizing them over their cute publicity stunts. Thanks for watching until the end. Do you have an example you'd like to give? Please do so in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.